All right, welcome into another day of your daily Devo. My name is Pastor Rick, and we are jumping in to the book of John, the Gospel of John. Can I get a what in the comment section if you're excited about being in the book of John? Let's go. So we're just going to do a quick intro video today, just to kind of get a little bit of our bearings moving forward, like what are we ready to dive into. So the first thing to know is that John is one of the four Gospels. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is a little bit of a unique one of the Gospels. I mean, I think they all are a little bit unique, but John is a little different from the other three. The other three are considered to be synoptic Gospels, where the book of John's a little more personal, up close and personal. And so, you know, some people kind of wonder, like, maybe why do you have four Gospels? Why isn't there just one big one? And it's kind of like hearing about someone or something from four different sources. You get to hear different flavors of the same person. You get to know a deeper picture of who that person is or was. And obviously, because knowing Jesus is kind of a big deal, having the more the merrier is kind of how we feel about this one. So let's jump right in to who wrote it. The writing of the Gospel of John is credited to the disciple John, who is referred to as the disciple whom Jesus loved, and also the same person that ended up writing the book of Revelation. And so he obviously was one of the 12 disciples. He walked with Jesus for his 3-ish year ministry and was with Jesus in pretty much all of the big moments. Peter, James, and John, you know, were the three that were there for the Mount of Transfiguration. So he had a revelation of Jesus different than some of the other disciples. And so he has something special to kind of bring to the table. When was it written? It's credited to be written somewhere between 70 and 100 AD. Obviously, Jesus died around 33 AD, 30 to 33, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on, or is it maybe technically like 29 to 33 AD, somewhere in there. And so 70, and most scholars kind of put the writing of John probably in the 80s. So, you know, John was rocking out to some great 80s bands while he was writing this book. Wrong 80s. Okay, wrong 80s. That's my bad. But no, so it was written probably sometime in the 80s, 80. And then why was it written? Well, John obviously knew Jesus really well and had a revelation of who Jesus was and felt like it was necessary to share who Jesus was with the world. And so that's really it right there. How does it compare to the other Gospels? All right, that's an interesting question. So let's just jump into that really quick. Matthew was written to the Jews, okay? So Matthew's audience was predominantly Jewish. So he was speaking to the Jews to talk about how Jesus was fulfilling a lot of the things from the Old Testament. So that was his big focus, was to kind of declare that Jesus is the one that's fulfilling. He's the Messiah that we've been waiting for. Matthew writes a lot about what Jesus said. It's very important to Matthew and to Matthew's audience, the things that Jesus said. And he's big on establishing the lineage of Jesus. And so he wants to declare that that Jesus was the son of David. So he came down that Davidic line. The Gospel of Mark written to Romans, so he's got a different audience in mind. And so obviously the things that you focus on are different when your audience is different. So that's one of the big things that differentiates kind of the style of the Gospels, is who the author was writing to communicate who Jesus was to them, because they're all going to have different different measurements for why they want to care or not care about Jesus. The Gospel of Mark was the book of action because the Romans were a people of action. So he wants to write to them about what Jesus did. So, Matthew writes about what Jesus said. Mark is writing about what Jesus did. Also, Mark is probably right, if we were to say who the eyewitness account of this gospel is, it would be Peter. And that Mark actually wrote the gospel for Peter. And there's a couple of different indicators in the gospel that kind of lead to that. And so, Peter, again, one of the big three of the disciples, Peter, James, and John, and so Mark and John are both written by the tight three, So, all right, the Gospel of Luke, written to the Greeks. So Luke was a doctor, and he wanted to put together an orderly account of who Jesus was so that the Greeks could know who he was. And Luke writes a lot about what Jesus felt because he was writing to the Greeks, and the Greeks were big on what you feel about the body. He was talking about the perfect man, that Jesus was the perfect man, because that was something the Greeks were really kind of obsessed with in their culture, was like the perfect man. And so he's writing kind of along those lines. And Gospel of John, he's writing about the God-man. So Luke's writing about the perfect man, but John is writing about the God-man. And John is writing about who Jesus is. So, Matthew, what Jesus said; Mark, what Jesus did; Luke, what Jesus felt. But John's writing about who Jesus was, who he is. And so John wrote, so Matthew wrote to the Jews, Mark to the Romans, Luke to the Greeks, John wrote to the world, to the whole world. For God so loved the world. And so then one big thing that the book of John is focused on is these 7 I am statements of Jesus. Jesus declared himself, I am the light of the world. He said, I am the good shepherd. He said, I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection. I am the life. I'm the true vine. The door of the sheep. So that's kind of a quick overview of what the Gospel of John brings to us. We want to talk about who Jesus is, that he is the Son of God, that he is God. In the beginning, verse 1 of chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was not a God, it is the God. It is God. Jesus is God. And so he's going to unfold that whole idea as he tells the story of walking with Jesus and how Jesus' life unfolded. And it's powerful. So pretty cool how all the Gospels come together. We're going to focus obviously on John. Maybe at some point in the future, I'll tackle the other 3. We'll see how it goes. The Bible's a big book. We're going to be at this for a while, So anyways, there you have it. The 7 I ams of Jesus as they unfold through the Gospel of John, and focusing on declaring to the world who Jesus is. He is the God-man. He is God made flesh. and dwelling among us. Emmanuel, God with us. So be encouraged that John has a message that is powerful, that is clear. And as we become more familiar with all the 7 I ams of Jesus, knowing who he is, how he's revealed himself to us, it's going to equip us, one, to experience those truths in our own lives, but also to be able to boldly declare those truths to other people's lives. And that's an important thing as we declare the gospel. It is declaring to people who they are surrendering to as their Lord and King. And it's Jesus, and he's worth our trust. He's worthy of our allegiance. He's worthy of our faith in him. So with that, God bless you tons and tons. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.